Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is Hillary Clinton's favorite person in the world. Henry Kissinger was responsible for assassinating Salvador Allende, a socialist who was elected, democratically elected, the president of Chile in 73 in order to make sure that country goes capitalist. Henry Kissinger and Adolf Nixon, Richard Nixon, Dick Nixon, they killed the president, assassinated, a foreign country's leader. So it'd be interesting how would America act if Chile did the same shit to us. And then the 4 million Vietnamese, including a bunch of Cambodians. So Henry Kissinger is 94 years old. He's a war criminal. He commits lots of war crimes. But remember when we put him in jail? Remember when he was held accountable? Remember when he was held responsible for those war crimes? Man, we showed him. Didn't we show him? Go and list all the 75, or it's actually 74 total rights and freedoms that every single Coloradoan-American has, or have, today, right now. So I took the United States freedoms, and I took Colorado's freedoms, and I put them together. So without further ado, number one, slavery is banned. According to the 13th Amendment, slavery is banned. And then Colorado, Article 2, Section 26, you don't have to be enslaved. The involuntary servitude is denied unless you're convicted. Both of them actually have that exception. If you're convicted, then you can be a slave to the jail system and the cops and the corporate. So the corporatist. Anyways, number two, right of contracts is absolute. So you have right of contracts in Article 2, Section 11 in the Colorado Constitution, and then in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Congress can't pass any. You're having tariffs on Chinese goods. We're doing a trade war now, so we're putting a bunch of tariffs. We're protecting some industries and then letting other industries flounder. There's lots of people that work for Arby's and Dollar General, but we're going to protect just the steel industry. The Russians own the steel company here in Pueblo. So the Russians own the steel company, and we're going to protect the domestic. So Russians can come buy the steel plant in our own hometown, and then we're going to put tariffs on them. So if we put tariffs on Chinese goods, how's Walmart going to survive? If we put tariffs on Chinese goods, I mean, all those kids are going to be out of work. And then what about the human rights abuses? They will not be able to afford them. I mean, my God, China can't afford their human rights abuses with the tariffs on Chinese goods. So what is China going to do with all these tariffs? One, slavery is banned. You have a right to be free, right to never be a slave. You have a right to contracts. Right to contracts. They are absolute. The Congress cannot impair the obligation of contracts. All citizens have equal protection of the law, according to the 14th Amendment. We all have natural, inherent, human, God-given rights. They're always protected just because we always have them. But Amendment 9, the 9th Amendment in Article 2, Section 28 in Colorado is written down that just because we wrote these freedoms down doesn't mean that it takes away from your God-given, natural, inherent human rights. Number 5, freedom from standing armies in all the 50 United States. None of the 50 United States can keep troops or ships of war in times of peace without the consent of Congress. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. So that's interesting. No standing armies per the states. We can have a U.S. Army, but no Colorado Army or a National Guard. To the U.S. Constitution, we can't have a National Guard unless we have the consent of Congress. So the only way that we have a National Guard that exists per each state is because of the United States. So JFK nationalizing the National Guard, that just seems obvious. And then for what's-his-face, George Wallace, to think that he could, take the troops away. Civilian authority must always control the military. That's Colorado Constitution, Article 2, Section 22. The military must always be subordinate to civilian authority. That's very important. That is not in the U.S. Constitution. So there's freedom from war. The U.S. Constitution says only Congress has the power to declare war per the War Powers Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. And then we also have freedom from wars of aggression by any of the 50 U.S. states unless actually invaded or such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So Colorado cannot declare war on Dumb fucking jackasses that think Bill Clinton got impeached over perjury. Oh yeah, we're going to ignore Ken Starr. We're going to ignore Newt Gingrich. We're going to ignore all the politics in the background, right? It was just Bill Clinton up there just lying up a storm, and we don't even know why he was doing it. And we always hold our president's feet to the fire, right? If they lie to us, no, hell, they could lie 1,000 times and they'll go kill 2.4 million Iraqi people. We're not going to do a fucking thing. So what's worse? Them lying to some elitist behind closed doors, some of these, whatever, the uppity, or lying to the American people. Lie to those fucking elites. I don't give a shit. Don't lie to me. So, the rape. You think raping a 13-year-old, is that a high crime? Well, maybe a misdemeanor, because that's what you need: treason, high crimes, and misdemeanors, right? Or bribery. Bribery, what about all that, those donations, those corporate donations? It's impeachable. A right to deny soldiers our own house for their quartering, at least during peacetime. Since it's war, they probably can go ahead and live in our houses and eat our foods and take our cattle and rape our women. Who gives a shit, right? So that's both the U.S. Constitution and Colorado Constitution. No quartering of soldiers in our homes. So in times of peace, right, and in times of war, only in a manner prescribed by law. This is how we're going to do it legally. But this is several things here, right? Right to deny soldiers quartering in your house. That's the Third Amendment to the Constitution. Then freedom from wars of aggression. We're not going to let any of the 50 states have standing armies, nor are we going to allow them to attack anybody and everybody that they want to. Only Congress has the power to declare war, so that takes the power away from the executive branch. Colorado says that there must be civilian control over the military. Have freedom from standing armies in all the 50 U.S. states. None of the 50 U.S. states can keep troops or ships of war in times of peace without the consent of Congress. Of course, we're at war right now, so that means all 50 states can keep troops and they can have ships of war as long as Congress allows them to. Also, they can have that's the National Guard. Civilian authority must always control the military. That's in Colorado's Constitution, not in America. Freedom from war. Only Congress is supposed to declare war. Since World War II, we have not had a congressional declaration of war. So also we have freedom from wars of aggression by any of the 50 U.S. states unless actually invaded or as imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So that means you have a right to self-defense. For Coloradan people, you have a right to defend yourselves, but you don't have a right to go invade Canada or Kansas or Montana. You can't just invade civil cases, not criminal cases, not cases where the cops or the state agents accuse you of a crime. Civil cases when your neighbor or somebody else stole more than $20 in controversy. If it's something over $20 in controversy, then the right of a trial by jury is protected. That's the 7th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. If the matter costs $20 or more, you have a right to a trial by jury. The right of a peaceful protest against the powers of government by petition, by demonstration, or by a forcefully reproachful protest called a remonstrance shall always be protected. That's Article 2, Section 24. So Colorado's Constitution allows you to give, all remonstrancy. You can have a forceful, reproachful protest. So forceful, reproachful, not nice, protest, remonstrance. There and say that corporations are people. You think a corporation is a person? That's what Mitt Romney says. He actually respects corporations more than people. It's the corporation first. You gut the corporation, the pensions, and then you fire all the fucking people. And then that's, Bain Capital. That's how you make a ton of shit. You make a shit ton of money with Bain Capital by tearing up a company from the inside out and then dissolving it. Like what's happening to Toys R Us. Great economy there, Don. Old Din Din. Yeah, Toys R Us are now, the owner dies and now there's no company. But corporations are people. Yeah, right. Corporations are people, like how they stormed the beaches on Normandy. Remember when the corporations fought in Iwo Jima? They fought in Iwo Jima. They were fighting, storming the beaches in Normandy. The blood that they shed for democracy, the blood that they shed for our freedom and our right to vote and freedom of speech. My God, these corporations in 24 of Article 2. All the Bill of Rights is under Article 2 in Colorado's Constitution. So Section 24 says we can have remonstrance and demonstrations and petitions. The First Amendment protects the right to petition. So we have the double protection when it comes to a right to petition with both Colorado and the U.S. Constitution. 13, right to enjoy and defend life. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It all is dependent upon life. And lots of things say it. The Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment, the second article, Section 3, and Section 25. Number 14, right to be paid for any of your property the government takes over. The Fifth Amendment on eminent domain. Private property cannot be taken away unless the owner consents to it in all cases. So you could take away property. Colorado makes it very specific. You can only take away private ways of necessity. So both the U.S. Constitution and Colorado's Constitution protects the right to property. So you can own all the land, you can have encomiendas, you can own all the capital, all the houses, all the factories that you want. And if the government wants to take that stuff over, they're going to have to go through the judicial branch. They're also going to have to pay you a fair market value if they win in the judicial branch. It is a judicial question. It's very clear. Article 2, Section 15 says that's a judicial question. Compensation is determined by a board of commissioners of not less than 3 freeholders, or by a jury as the owner demands. So the owner, the person whose property is being threatened, how much is it? Well, it's going to, by a board of commissioners. A board of commissioners is going to say how much that land is for. The only exceptions that were allowed in Colorado to take people's land is for water. For the reasons that you can take property away are very select. And if the owner consents to it, you can take the property away, like it's nothing. If they consent to it, pay them the fair market value. If they don't consent to it, the only way you can take people's land in Colorado is if it's for private ways of necessity. So you're living in a land, and then the land around it, you have to have a driveway so you can leave that land. So that's a private way of necessity. There's also reservoirs, drains, flumes, or ditches on or across the lands of others for agricultural, mining, milling, domestic, or sanitary purposes. So that means you can have water lines, you can have sewage lines, you can have drains. So, when there's rain, make sure the water gets off the property. You can have water lines going up to your house. So it seems like water. It's all about water. And then the agricultural, mining, milling. 7 million Yemeni people. What's it take for the American people to give a shit? What will it take? When they cut off our internet, when they cut the internet off, then we'll actually start to give a shit, right? 7 million Yemeni people is on the verge of starving to death. They're getting cholera, yellow fever, they're getting all these old diseases. So they're bombing, they're poor, they're going to the hospital, they're spreading all these diseases to each other. Cholera is shit water. They don't have any water to drink, so they drink water that has people's feces in it, and then that spreads the cholera. Then they just diarrhea themselves to death until they not starve, but dehydrate. And it's happening because of Saudi Arabia, who we just give a big old fucking arms deal, and the United States and Israel. If tomorrow we found out that 7 million Yemeni people died, fell off the face of the earth, do we change our habits? Do we change our ways? I'm tired of saying the same shit over and over again. Meanwhile, MSNBC tells you all only industries. It seems like that's protected in eminent domain. Agriculture, mining, milling, domestic or sanitary purposes. So if there's a gold mine, yes, we could take your land in order to get some water and sewage. And if there's mills, we could take your land and get some water and sewage. If there's agricultural reasons, make sure, there's a right-of-way and also the drainage and irrigation. So same deal, domestic and sanitary purposes. So that's very, very not much at all. It's actually not a freedom now that I think about it because, so that's Fifth Amendment, Article 2, Section 14, and Section 15. So 15, freedom from Confederates. All Confederates are banned from serving in the American government. Take a picture of all those people wearing Confederate fucking bullshit. You can't work as an officer in the American government. The 14th Amendment bans all Confederates who have taken up arms against the United States from serving, are banned from serving in our government. You might say, okay, hey, Jonathan, whoa, wait a second. The Confederates that was talking about, during the Civil War when they were actually shooting back. Well, the Confederates of today, you're telling me they're not sitting there talking about what the South is going to rise again? They have a Confederate flag. They are, outright saying that they hate America and they love racism and they want to reinstitute slavery. So they want to get black people back on the plantation. So that should be a threat. That is a threat. Is it a threat, not a limit to free speech? We're allowed to go around threatening people. So the Confederates, they're right there on the verge, okay? Maybe you could wave a Confederate flag and really just what about Alabama or something? It has nothing to do with fighting the United States of America. It has nothing to do with slavery. It has nothing to do with bringing up the Confederacy, being a treasonous, traitorous bastard, and then taking up arms against that government. Americans have a right to be American. You can be an American in all 50 states if you are born on U.S. soil, according to the 14th Amendment. If you're born on U.S. soil, then you're an American, and you're entitled to all the privileges and immunities that American citizenship offers you. If you are over 21 years of age, you have a right to drink alcohol. Nobody can take that away from you. The right to drink alcohol for all American adults over 21 years of age remains absolute, eternal, and inviolate, according to the 21st Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The right to due process is sacred and shall be liberally construed. Section 25 of the Article 2 Colorado Constitution and Amendment 5 and the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We all have a right to due process. We all have a right to the law to be applied equally to anybody and everybody. So when it comes to gay marriage, peacefully assemble. We're allowed to get into groups of, 5 or 6 or 7 or more and talk amongst each other. We have a right to peacefully assemble, get into large masses of groups, and that does scare the power elite. So we have a right to habeas corpus. This is so vital when America was first established, the right of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus literally means that you have the body. Do you have the body? Do you have the body? Do we have the body? Who has the body? So when someone is arrested, are you sure you're allowed to arrest that person? Do you have proper jurisdiction like ATF, the only alcohol, tobacco, firearms? You can't kill 25 kids in Waco, right? So the right of habeas corpus. Do you have the body? Are you allowed to arrest this person? Is it in the correct jurisdiction? The people have a right to be heard of the charges and enough detail that you could actually respond to it. And if you have to be taken before a court. Remember when Richard Milhouse Nixon said that nothing that you do as president is illegal? If you're president, it's all illegal, according to Richard Milhouse Nixon. If you get impeached, then you cannot get pardoned anymore. An impeachment is an embarrassment for the rest of your life. So if Nixon would have got impeached, they was threatening impeachment, and that's why he resigned. He resigned and then got that pardon from Gerald Ford, who was born Leslie King. Yeah, because y'all know your history so goddamn much, America. I know, so much. Yeah, of course, the impeachment got us Jimmy Carter. We impeached Nixon. He didn't want to be impeached. We were about to file it. He resigns instead, pulls some, chicanery, and then later on gets Gerald Ford to pardon him. If he was impeached, he wouldn't have been able to get pardoned. But because he cleverly resigned, like a smart cookie that he is, and Gerald Ford is an evil piece of shit, Nixon gets away with all corpus in the Sixth Amendment, the right to be told of the charges. So if you're accused in a criminal case, they have to tell you why they have put you in jail. So you have a right to habeas corpus, except in cases of rebellion and or invasion. And that's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution and Article 2, Section 21 of the Coloradoan Constitution. So that's the right of habeas corpus. If you are arrested, you have a right to be taken before a judge, and then the judge says either yes or no that the cop was allowed to arrest you for the charges in the jurisdiction that you have been arrested for. So you have a right to go before a judge, and then if the judge is like, yeah, it's okay, they're allowed to take you, then, you don't really have much say-so. But at the very least, you have a right to go before a judge. Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, and Guantanamo Bay today is to freedom of speech and freedom of the press and to peacefully assemble, and freedom from religion to freedom from state religion. And this is both in Colorado and the U.S. Constitution. Every person shall be able to shall be free to speak, write, or publish whatever so apparently only men have free speech in Colorado, will on any subject, being responsible for all abuse of that liberty. Seems like it's opening up for libel cases, but then it goes on to say that the truth is the only proper defense for libel cases, and then a jury of a court will determine if it be libel or the truth. The right to peacefully assemble, the right from religion. In the U.S. Constitution, you cannot be forced to have a religious test. Freedom from religious test for all offices in the U.S. of A. Article 6, Clause 3. So freedom from religion is in here. Freedom that all Coloradoan-Amerikans have is freedom from state religion. That's the First Amendment. No state religion. You cannot establish one religion being supreme over the other. No person shall be required to attend or support any ministry or place of worship, religious sect, or denomination against his consent, nor shall any preference be given by law to any religious denomination or mode of worship. Section 4, Clause 2 and 3 of the Coloradoan Constitution. So you don't have to be required to have a exam. Are you Christian or Muslim? That is strictly forbidden in the U.S. Constitution. And then freedom from state religion, both the U.S. and the Establishment Clause with the U.S. Constitution, but with Colorado, it's more very, very particular. You do not have to go to a place of worship. You do not have to go to a specific church. You do not have to be a specific denomination. Americans have a right to keep and bear arms. That's the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, the right of no person to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, and property, or in aid of the civil power, i.e. posse comitatus, when thereto legally summoned. But, specifically, this is Colorado's Constitution words, carry concealed is not a right. Article 2, Section 13 specifically says that we cannot carry concealed. You can have a gun, but you got to put it on the outside so everybody knows that you got a gun, and it's got to be holstered. If you pull it out of your holster, then that's, you pulled. That means that's self-defense. You had a gun and you pulled, yeah, that's self-defense. That's exactly how people would get away in the Wild West with dueling, because if somebody pulled, you don't really know what they're going to do. So the Second Amendment to the Constitution, of course, and then Colorado's 13, Section 13, Article 2. What does it take? What will it take for the United States of America to stand up? The people. So we get a flash of democracy with 35. But when the real democracy, when do we say, you know what, enough is enough? We are in the same boat, and we're going to do something different. We ignored the Iraq War, all those lies. We ignore what is happening in Palestine, what is going on in Yemen, the Patriot Act, the NDAA, the constant bullshit from this commander and dickhead fucking whatever, Queef, Schmegma, President Schmegma, President Shithole. So King Louis XVI, he started getting mercenaries to go and attack the people of France. So if Donald did that, started paying a bunch of Canadians or a bunch of Nigerians or a bunch of Russians to invade America, does that turn, do you say, well, maybe impeach or maybe we should resist in some fucking way? Y'all getting used to Donald times that we have, it's mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, we have a freedom from titled nobility. So nobody is prince or duke or princess or queen or king or duke. I mentioned duke. Nobody's a duke, the Duke of Earl or the Duck of Earl. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. No state shall grant any title of nobility. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, both of the U.S. Constitution. 26, the right to keep and bear arms. 27, the freedom of religion. So freedom from religion, freedom from state religion, and freedom to religion. So no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his opinions concerning religion. Section 4, Clause 1. Section 4, Clause 1, Colorado Constitution. Freedom from being convicted by the legislature. I think it's Article 2. So freedom from being convicted by the legislatures, whether it's the federal government or state governments, cannot pass bills of attainders. And bills of attainders is convictions without trial. So the General Assembly in Denver cannot convict anybody in the legislative branch. They can't convict anybody. There has to be a trial. That's all judicial branch stuff. So they can't do that. The presumption of innocence also is protected. So the legislature, whether federal government or the state government, they cannot pass bills of attainders. And also they cannot pass ex post facto laws. Ex post facto laws is passing a law making something that was legal prior to the law illegal. So let's say marijuana. Marijuana was made illegal 1973 by Richard Nixon. So in 1970, you cannot get in trouble for smoking weed if the law is passed in 1973. That's an ex post facto law, and those are forbidden. No ex to property is firmly enshrined and codified, shall be forever protected. Article 2, Section 3, Article 2, Section 25 in the 5th and 14th Amendment protects the right to property. Number 31, no state tariffs on exports. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. So no state tariffs on exports. Colorado cannot put a tax on any of the stuff that they sell outside of Colorado. So that's crazy. It's all about the exports. Isn't that what a good economy is? All about the exports. If we can't even get, the taxes on our exports, that's bullshit. I don't like that idea. If we're going to do a trade war, then every state should be allowed to put tariffs on their exports. If they want to. That's, handicapping themselves, if anything. But if they can make money, say like Colorado weed is the best weed out there, we should get money from those exports. Clear that housing bubbles are good for predator capitalists. If you got some shit ton of money in the bank, God, you can't wait for America to fuck up. You can't wait for American families to default onto their loans and their houses so they get kicked out, and then you can buy up all that debt or buy that house and that land dirt cheap. Or the banks can grab all of that land and those housing, the savings and loan. These are land and housing. We're not putting people in homes and making sure they have their own land. So there's all these payments that Donald Trump is paying all these people out. They call it the catch and kill. So whenever somebody is alleging some, shit that Donald Trump, some crimes that Donald Trump has done, he goes out, he catches it, and he kills the story by paying them off. There was a 13-year-old, or she was 13, who had accused Donald of raping her. I want to be secure in our persons, papers, homes, and effects, right to be protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. We must have a warrant signed by a judge with a list of specific spots and items to be searched for. So Fourth Amendment, Article 2, Section 7, right to have a grand jury indictment before a capital punishment can be imposed. So they can't kill you. They can't convict you of a felony unless, at first, a grand jury has already indicted you. So the grand jury is pretty important in the judicial branch. Who serves on the grand jury? Nobody can get the death penalty until you get indicted. Nobody can get a felony until you get an indictment, except for the military. That's the Fifth Amendment. So before capital punishment can be imposed, you must have a grand jury indictment unless you're in the military. And the same thing, Colorado Constitution, Article 2, Section 8. There's a ban on double jeopardy. Once you had a regular court decide a thing, then no other courts. You cannot be convicted twice. Right to enjoy and defend liberty, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property. That's in the U.S. and Colorado Constitution. So right to defend liberty. The ban on double jeopardy. This is, again, Colorado is taking away freedom. So where they double down when both Colorado and the United States say we have a freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to peacefully assemble, then that means we have, twice two governing documents that both protect that exact same right. When it comes to double jeopardy, however, under Colorado, Article 2, Section 18, it says that you're free from double jeopardy except if the jury disagree or if the judgment be arrested after the verdict. So the jury or somebody you can arrest the judgment after the verdict, or if the judgment be reversed for error in law, okay, the accused should not be deemed to have been in jeopardy. So if the judgment be the right of having American leaders being free from foreign influence, the emoluments clause, any American office of profit or trust. So that's corporations. Any office of profit, that's a corporation. We grant franchises by the government. So any American office of profit or trust, which that sounds more government-y, without the consent of Congress, cannot accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind from any prince or king or foreign states. We want American leaders to be free from foreign influence. So that's why they can't accept presents or emoluments or offices or titles from any kind, from any foreign state whatsoever. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. We have freedom of sea commerce. Ships can choose any port or harbor on any coast of the U.S. that they choose for docking. Are you getting used to Donald? Are you getting used to him? Oh, he's okay, doing all right. Just let him, work his magic? He's doing such a good fucking job. He's completely transformed the presidency. He's completely transformed it forever and ever. Nixon kept getting away with his shit because there was no opposition. Who's going to oppose Donald? Is there anybody even on, the horizon that can stop this maniac, that can stop this psychopath? And then, yeah, he is Hitler. He very much is a right-wing, tyrannical fascist, spreading fascism all over the place. And we're going to give him a bunch of guns? Give him all the guns in the world, right? Give him a bunch of guns, give him a bunch of nukes, and then he's giving, a bunch of weapons over to Saudi Arabia. If he gives a bunch of nukes to ISIS in North Korea, but he made a bunch of money, are we willing to accept that? What's our breaking point? Is there a breaking point at all? Great Depression, or do we just, we'll fight? No, we'll take for the shippers, 38 freedom from taxes of state-to-state sea commerce. So if you went from Virginia to Massachusetts to Florida, then none of the states can tax that commerce because America forbids it. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 639, freedom from the Secretary of the Treasury's abuse. No money can be drawn from the Treasury except that which Congress appropriates. So the Treasurer has no control over the Treasury. Only the Congress can pass the laws, and then once they write it out, this person gets this much, then the Treasurer is an administrative bureaucrat who just carries the will of Congress on through. Number 40, right to be an American on all the states. If you're born on this soil, then the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. state has the freedom to coin silver and gold. All 50 states are allowed to coin silver and gold coins. Article 1, Section 10. They can't issue their own paper currency, but when it comes to gold coins and silver coins, all states can do this. I actually want an economy that has the Colorado dollar tied to, $5 of Colorado dollars is equal to 1 ounce of Colorado Kush. Tied to marijuana, tied to something. That actually makes it sound money. It beats Bitcoin. It undercuts fiat currency. It's better than the, arbitrary. Silver and gold is just as arbitrary as anything else. And those are industrial metals. So we need those for, our equipment and electronics. 42, the right to vote for senators by popular vote. That's the 17th Amendment. So we have a right to vote for senators by popular vote. Before, it's the state legislatures voting our senators. Senators are almost right to have a maximum 2-term presidency, and that's it. So term limit stops anybody from being a tyrant. It's the 22nd Amendment, ban on poll taxes. You can't tax somebody, to death to where they can't vote. You always have a right to vote. The 24th Amendment bans poll taxes, which is taxes that you hadn't paid for property or this or that or what have you, so therefore you cannot vote. So you can't have any taxes tied on to the institution of suffrage. The rights of crime victims shall be heard. This is different from the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution lists all the rights of the criminally accused. They want to stop tyranny, so if the state is going to accuse somebody, then they should have a right to a lawyer and right to have witnesses, so they have all these rights, but only the Coloradoan Constitution gives rights to the victims of crime, which really we need to take care of the victims first and then the criminals later. So anybody who's a Coloradans only, not anybody else. Only Coloradans have the a right for crime victims to be heard. Anybody who's a victim of a criminal act or that person's designee, legal guardian, or surviving immediate family members, if the person is deceased, has a right to be heard in all critical stages of the criminal justice system. Article 2, Section 16A. The rights of the criminally accused, there's the right to defend thyself. You have a right to defend yourself. Article 2, Section 16, Colorado. For criminal cases, right to be confronted by the witnesses against them. Right to have those witnesses accusing you meet you face to face. So somebody can't just say, hey, you did this, and then go hide in a corner. So it could be dangerous, but you can't just have anonymous people throwing, to some shadow government. Well, there's a person behind that curtain, and they said you did it, and we're not going to reveal who that person behind the curtain is. Budget of the United States, you got about $1 trillion for war, $1 trillion for Social Security, $1 trillion for Medicare and Medicaid, and then $1 trillion for administration. So $4 trillion All that can be cut. Fuck all that shit. Social Security, only the old and disabled get a check. No, everybody should get a check. That gets rid of poverty, but we're only going to give it to, what, just the people that vote? $1 trillion for Medicare, Medicaid. Again, the elderly get health care, and then the poor get health care. What about everybody else? So we're almost there. Almost got universal health care. We're spending $1 trillion on this shit, and then $1 trillion for war. Right? Might as well go ahead and spend $1 trillion for war and then $1 trillion for administration for them to administer these three programs: war, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I don't know. Just doesn't seem like it's, he does all these big billion-dollar deals and shit. So what? Do we get a commission? Do we make any money off of this? Colorado and the United States protect the right to a lawyer, the right to counsel, Article 2, Section 16, the Sixth Amendment. You have a right to a lawyer. Right to compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in one's favor for criminals cases. So if you're accused, you have a right to a lawyer, and then you have a right to bring witnesses in for your favor. So this is the people. I have a list of witnesses. In fact, I think that, if I cross-examine some of these people, I wouldn't mind bringing in the witnesses the state would bring in so I could cross-examine them. I think you have a right to, subpoena all the witnesses that you want, according to the Sixth Amendment and according to the 16th section of Article 2. So they have a process to compel the attendance of witnesses in his behalf. Apparently only men can have witnesses attend on their behalf in Colorado. So the right to a lawyer, right of a trial by jury is inviolate in cases. The right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury in the court of the proper jurisdiction, says the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. in Article 2, Section 16 of Colorado. For Colorado, except criminal cases not in courts of record or in civil cases. So the right of trial by jury is inviolate in criminal cases, but not in civil cases and not in criminal cases, not in courts of record, which is what, a police court? What is a court that doesn't record what the hell? The courts of record? That's, what kind of court is that? And in criminal cases not in courts of record and in civil cases, juries can be less than 12 individuals. 9 of 12 members of a grand jury can issue indictments. It doesn't take unanimous, not only 9, so a supermajority. And then the General Assembly can abolish the grand jury. So that's Article 2, Section 23, Colorado. The right to remain silent, remain silent is the Fifth Amendment. It's also the 18th section, Section 18, Article 2. One does not have to testify against oneself, so you have the right to plead the Fifth, or you can plead Section 18. I plead the 18th section of Article 2 of the Coloradoan Constitution. Number 52, no excessive bail, no excessive fines, nor cruel nor unusual punishments can be administered to the convicted. So you can convict them, but you can't, no excessive bail or to the accused, no excessive fines. Bail would go to the accused. Fines, cruel and unusual punishments. Death penalty is cruel and unusual, but somebody said, well, it was not either or, it had to be both. Nah, fuck you. You can't be cruel, you can't be unusual, you can't be weird, you can't have excessive fines, you can't beat them, you can't torture them, you can't rape them, and you can't murder them. That is very cruel and very be a war criminal. If you were to go, there's been war criminals. That one guy killed himself in Serbia. And then the Nazis, right, there's war tribunals. So people have been tried for war crimes, and they've been convicted. Never in America. The United States, the people say, you know what, who gives a shit? If you're the president and you kill an 8-year-old girl like Nora in Yemen, who's an American girl, you'll get away with it. You'll get away with any and every bit of war crimes that you commit. Go into communities, rape and pillage them, steal their damn oil, kill anybody and everybody, kill over 2 million Iraqi people. Who gives a shit? American people ain't going to do a goddamn thing about it. Other countries hold their war criminals responsible. All they had to do was move to the United States and then sit on the American throne. Once they sit on the American imperial throne, then war crimes, they'll get away with every bit of it. It's legal here. There's no punishment for any of the war crimes. Article 2, Section 20, and the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. All those things are both backed by U.S. and Colorado Constitution. No excessive bail, no excessive fines, nor cruel, nor unusual punishments. So those are doubled up, right? Nope. Both U.S. and the Colorado Constitution says you cannot be cruel to me. Number 53, right to know how public monies are spent. Every so often, from time to time, a regular statement and accounts of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published. This is the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. So how's the government spending the money? They're supposed to publish some sort of document that tells all of us what is going on. 54, freedom from eternal immunities and corporations. So the General Assembly, they can pass special privileges and franchises and immunities, but they're all revocable. No revocable grant of special privileges or franchises. About that, the General Assembly can pass special privileges and franchises, which corporations, that makes sense, but special immunities, special privileges, why is that acceptable? The General Assembly can, pick and choose, give some people special privileges. The franchises are just saying for corporations, they can be taken away. That which the state gives can take it away. So if they do give immunities or privileges or corporations, that's not irrevocable. So these extra things that the General Assembly is allowed to do, according to Article 2, Section 11, Colorado's Constitution, they're all revocable, so they can all be undone. 55, Colorado's General Assembly is forbidden to declare felonies or treason. And treason is defined as taking up arms against the state, Colorado, or the U.S., and then having two witnesses who observed the same thing, that you took up arms against the nation of Colorado or the American state. Also, it says that if you are a treasonous piece of shit, if they found that you're guilty of treason, that only the people convicted of treason will get punished, but not the families. So no conviction can work corruption of blood or forfeiture of estate. So you can't be held for the crimes of your father. It doesn't hit the family. And then forfeiture of estate, right? So if the person is treasonous, then the families get to keep the estate. That's Article 2, Section 9, Colorado. Right of the suicided. If you kill yourself in Colorado, the estate of the person who killed themselves will be treated the exact same in cases of natural death. So it'll just, it doesn't matter if you killed yourself or if you died naturally. The laws for your estate still apply the same. Article 2, Section 9. Right to bail with large sums of cash unless it's a crime of violence or above. So really, right to bail, that's what Colorado says. Section 19, Article 2, you have a right to bail. So if you get, busted or this, you have a right to get out if you have a shit ton of money. Unless, then they have a whole bunch of exceptions, and the lowest exception, if you're, felonies, of course, but even crimes of violence. So any crime of violence, any kind of crime of violence, they can hold you indefinitely. You don't have a right to bail. So they say you have a right to bail, but then they, added all these exceptions, Section 19, Article 2, so not really. You don't really have a right to bail at all. If it's less than a crime of violence, so I guess petty theft, you have a right to bail, but anything, crime of violence, rape, murder. So landowners have a right to vote or petition on any proposed annexations. If a city wants to expand, then where they want to expand, the people of that area have a right to vote on the expansion. Section 30. Coloradoan people actually have more freedoms than the Americans. Coloradoan-Amerikans have a right to home rule. In your own city, you get more than 2,000 people and you vote for it, then you get to run your own city. You can have a Catalonia. There's a 100 home rule cities in Colorado. So the state is, supreme. We have a federal government where you have the federal and the state, but then we also have cities. And that is right. We have a right to home rule. We have a right to be Catalonia if we have more than 2,000 individuals. Also, Coloradans have a right to initiative, referendum, and recall. These are democratic tools that are available to all Coloradans, but not to all Americans. The right of initiative, the right to referendum, the right of recall, so you can put issues on the ballot. The people can, the government can, and then you can recall officials if, you get enough signatures. Somebody got elected, you don't like it. You have Donald Trump, he's going to do a big old nuclear deal, $450 trillion worth of nuclear power. He's going to resurrect the Nazis, and he's going to resurrect the Ku Klux Klan and the Confederacy. The South has won. He's going to be dictator for life. He hasn't listened to the Constitution since he's been in there. And so let's just, change the name United States to the Confederacy, the United Confederacy, Just, does that change anything? Does anybody ever get, my God, if murder, it seems like Americans, when it comes to war, Murder's okay. Who gives a shit, right? When Donald says somebody, he cares about the plutocrats in this country. You're telling me he's going to be in Cameroon, he's going to fight for their what? Their democratic freedoms, their human rights? Bullshit. He's over there stealing their oil, stealing their natural resources because he's smart. That's what he said before, like he's smart. What if he shoots a homeless person on Fifth Avenue? Would you still be a... There's a liberty of conscience. I think it had to do with religion. So it says you have a liberty of conscience. You can think whatever you want, but not licentiousness. Section 4, Clause 1, Article 2, Colorado. So we have a right to have initiative, referendum, recall, liberty of conscience. Women have the same rights as men in Colorado, Article 2, Section 29. The taxes. This is interesting, one Tabor. So the Tabor law, Article 10 in Colorado, it says that if there's excess taxes, that gets returned back to the people. So if you get extra money, you don't try to figure out how to spend that money so you get a bigger budget. You have to give that money back to the people. So it prevents the government from spending any more money than what they're allowed. Women have the same rights as men. We have a right to seek and obtain happiness. We have a right to safety and security. Safety, security, happiness, right to fair elections. All elections shall be free and 3, Article 2 is right to safety and security. Right to fair elections. They don't go into detail. This is Section 5, Article 2, Colorado. All elections shall be free and open, and no power, civil or military, shall at any time interfere to prevent the free exercise of the right of suffrage. So it says you have free elections, open elections, and nobody can stop you from going to vote or running. So free and open are the two key verbs there. So we have a right to fair elections. I think being free and open means, fair elections, just obvious. So free, open, we can be more detailed. Number 70, all Americans over 18 have a right to vote according to the 15th, 19th, 24th, and 26th Amendments. Aliens have the same property rights as native-born citizens. So that means if there is an illegal alien in Colorado and they bought a bunch of acreage and housing, they have the same property rights as... All these things should make you jump out of your goddamn chairs. And when do we stop this shit? We have 2 representatives. Where I'm at right now, there are 2 representatives who are competing. Actually, I only have 1 representative, but I have a senator, right? 2 senators, which they're so high above, everything. You can't get a corner a senator unless you got a bunch of money. Now, the House of Representatives, I have 1 House of Representative, 1 rep to go to in order to get my will heard. So I have no representation. This is taxation without representation. Donald makes a $105 billion arms deal with North Korea. Does that change your mind? Maybe you don't go to that goddamn restaurant. Maybe you actually do talk about some politics for once in your godforsaken life. He's going to do a $205 billion arms deal for ISIS. With that, do you give a shit? He's going to make some money, right? He's smart. He's a good idea. ISIS is just killing people over there. War is so peaceful over here. Isn't war just nice and peaceful? In 27, Article 2, Section 27, aliens have the same property rights as native-born citizens, right to use our courts for ourselves. This is Colorado. So it's amazing, actually. Aliens have the same property rights as native-born Coloradans. So they don't have a right to be citizens, but they have a right to own shit here in this state. That's definitely a corporation thing. That's foreign corporations, national, multinational corporations. For, China, for Germans, for the Polish, for Spanish, for anybody that wants to own property. I think it's actually ridiculous. It kind of makes, I don't know, it's liberal, but it seems a little too liberal, but maybe Bolivia, if there's a reciprocity. So 72, we have a right to use our courts for ourselves. All victims have rights, and in Colorado, courts of justice shall be open to every person, and a speedy remedy afforded to every injury to person, property, or character, and the right and justice shall be administered. The Democrats on this. Democrats seem to say, yeah, war is acceptable. Who gives a shit, right? Hillary Clinton loved Kissinger. She was overthrowing Honduras. She was overthrowing Libya, and there's a slave trade in Libya now. But, we got 30 shadow wars in Africa, so Donald's doing Hillary Clinton's plan. Donald Trump is very much a Hillary Clinton hawk today, right? He's escalating Syria, and it's just Democrats should be for democracy, should be for the working class, the poor, the homeless. When did the Democrats quit being for the economics? It seems like populist economics, economic populism is where it's at. But instead, we're all going to freak the fuck out and what? Give Führer, Yin Führer, all of our guns. So Donald Trump has all the nukes. He's got the ATF. He's got the FBI. He's got the Army, the Navy, the Marines. So, and then on top of it, he's going to take all of our guns. We're just going to give him all the weapons. He has entitled to, body integrity. Every person has a right to dignity and respect. And if somebody, criminalizes you, if that you are robbed, or there's a crime of violence or rape or murder, then you have a right to use the courts. These courts are for the Coloradoan people. This is Section 6, Article 2. The aliens have the same property rights as Section 27. Now, the right and justice shall be administered without sale, denial, or delay. So all courts of justice is open for every person, and then a speedy remedy is afforded for every injury to all victims. Property or character. So not just to the person, but their property and their character. And it must be administered, justice must be administered without sale, denial, or delay. So right away, right to revolution is also in Colorado's Constitution. There's inherent rights. Right to revolution is just an inherent right anyways, especially a country that's born in revolution. But our U.S. Constitution is an anti-revolutionary document. Shays' Rebellion had happened, and then we hurried up and wrote the U.S. Constitution. Thomas Jefferson was in France at the time. So interesting that they wouldn't have Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, write the U.S. Constitution. While he's away, Shays' Rebellion happens, and he says the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots and with tyrants. It's natural manure. So revolution, resistance, he wants to see these rebellions happen every 20 years. But the people here in the United States, the elites, the slave owners, and the bondholders and the bankers, they are afraid of it. So that's why they made sure nobody had a right to vote, no women, no blacks, no Native Americans, slaves, or slavery was still going to be institutionalized. I want to mention on Max Kaiser, we're sitting there saying, Stacy, whatever, and Max Kaiser, they were talking about the rent is too damn high and how there's a big, massive movement in New York because instead of them actually doing anything about it, price controls or rent controls or building affordable housing, instead everybody's ignoring this shit, so they're going to be opposed to gentrification. And how can you tell when the neighborhood's going to be gentrified? Well, you get a bunch of art galleries in there, you get a bunch of hipster coffee cafes, so then these developers brag about, look, we got the art gallery, we got these coffee shops, and then they could charge exuberant, amounts of money. So they make a shit ton of money. That's how you know when your neighborhood's about to get gentrified. Or maybe the cereal cafes, right? People want to have a bowl of Captain Crunch out in public. Well, you get a cereal cafe, you get a coffee shop, you get a, hipster coffee shop, or you get, what's the other thing? The other thing, you get prison is illegal unless upon refusal to deliver up his estate for the benefit of his creditors. So apparently only men can be held to account for their debt and they can go to jail, but it's saying that the debtor's prison is illegal unless they don't offer up their estate for the benefit of his creditors, so bankruptcy or in cases of tort or where there's a strong presumption of fraud, which is the same thing. So if there's fraud, right, if you try to fraudulently say that you did this or did that, but if you got in over your head and it wasn't intentional, so there was no strong presumption of fraud, and you deliver up your estate, then you cannot go to debtor's prison. Right to revolution, lots of states have right to revolution clauses. Section 2 of Article 2 is Colorado. It says we have a right to revolution as long as it's necessary to our safety and happiness and not repugnant to the Constitution of the United States of America. My methodology, I scanned the 27 amendments for the American freedoms, and then I scanned the body of the U.S. Constitution. So for the American freedoms, I read the whole document, right? The body of the Constitution and all 27 amendments, and I extrapolated the freedoms from out of those things. Not all amendments are freedoms, and then there were some freedoms in the Constitution right next to the slavery provisions. For Colorado's protected freedoms, I depended on the freedoms listed exclusively in Colorado's Bill of Rights, which is Article 2, but not the body of Colorado Constitution, except for a few freedoms I just so happen to know, such as Tabor, the right of home rule, initiative, referendum, recall. So I didn't read the body of the Constitution. It goes on, and it's really long and contradicting. We need a constitutional convention for the U.S., constitutional convention for Colorado, and one for the city of Pueblo. Let's have constitutional conventions